Welcome back, America. You know, as I sit here, Jim, we're good friends thinking about this. How do we define due process?
I think it does relate to what's at stake. You know, due process for my traffic ticket is a lot different than due process for a murder trial. So, you know, there's a little bit of that kind of, the definition of pornography, you know, when you see it. And there's procedural and there's substantive. There's all these layers, as you said, of difficult 14th Amendment case law defining it. I just think when you're talking about massive amounts of administrative hearings, and certainly there's administrative hearings across the country every day, not just limited to immigration, but all sorts of areas of our lives. You can't expect due process to be defined as some sort of rigorous TV trial. It's got to be something where we expect the executive branch to play fair, and you have a safety valve of some sort of appellate relief from time to time, but the bottom line decisions are made with great deference by the people that are in charge of carrying out the law.
What do you do when the prior administration brings 530,000 people in here by the bastardization of the whole notion of parole under immigration through an executive order, basically soliciting people to come into the country? 530,000 of them are flown into America. And President Trump says, no, we know who they are. We know who was flown into America. They're here illegitimately, and I'm removing them. And then you have a federal judge, I think she's in Boston, who says, no, each one of them gets due process. And I'm thinking to myself, if you know each one of them who was brought here in violation of immigration law and so forth and so, what is this due process going to look like? I mean, what does the administrative law judge say? Okay, you're on the list, you were here, the president says you leave, now goodbye? I mean, is that due process?
Well, I think in that circumstance, it's pretty close to that. You know, when you have a fugitive in a criminal case, they're usually, and they're picked up in some other district, some other state, they're entitled to what's called an identity hearing. That's nothing like a trial. You're not asking whether they're guilty of some crime. You're just saying, is this the guy that was wanted? Is this the guy that Maryland is seeking who now shows up in Texas? I think that's essentially the equivalent when you talk about parolees or temporary protected status type situations. You know, this should not be confused with any sort of long, substantive trial on the merits. It should just literally be, are you one of those folks? Yeah, it looks like you are. Goodbye.
And what's interesting about what you say, which is right on, the advocates on the left are asking for full-blown due process processes. And they're doing that because they know the system simply can't handle that number of people. Isn't that really the motivation in those circumstances?
Yeah, grind it to a halt. I mean, look, if you're literally going to suggest that there should be these hotly contested, significant, rules of evidence applying kind of battles in administrative courts, you're going to get through 2 a day and, do the math in terms of how that's really going to work out. And of course, it's always the slippery slope. We're entitled to a full-blown hearing, which obviously means we have to have appeals as well. And so the intent is clearly to drag things into the muck, to make it grind to a halt, and to essentially liberate a number of people that never had any business being in this country.
Jim, you always have great common sense, my friend. I appreciate you very much. God bless you.
All right, good seeing you.
We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.